Yeah, I guess my concern would be, um, I don't really know if there's any good reason to posit a metaphysical modality at all. Um,
Okay, so are you saying? Why posit that there are other possible worlds? Why posit that is that kind of what
yeah,
you're?
sort of like yeah, like why posit that there are metaphysical.
Oh, he cut out. I did not disconnect him. I swear. All right, let me. Are you
Sorry.
there?
Yeah, sorry.
It's
Yeah, I
gonna
was
look to
saying
everybody like, oh, he doesn't like this objection. Cut his
no,
mic.
no, no. That's it's no. Uh, yes, I'm saying why posit that there's like metaphysical truths, metaphysical modal truths at all. Um, Considering there, like, it's not really clear what metaphysical modality consists in, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Like, what does it mean for something to be metaphysically possible or impossible, right? So, like, someone who's somebody could say something is um nomologically possible in the sense that we're taking certain regularities in nature. um we're making we're like inferring certain nomological laws, right, which are just descriptions of these regularities, and we're saying, well, what's logically consistent with this law, right? And that's how we get certain nomological modality, right? um but then it's not really clear why we should posit, like, what is metaphysical modality going to be, right?
Sure. So you're right that in like and I think theoretical physicists do a lot of that as far as like, well, we have these laws. What sort of is consistent with those laws? And I think of different possible scenarios or different possible effects, and that's how they like calculate fine tuning, right? So and that's sort of a different field than we're looking at with metaphysical modality. So it's good that you're making a distinction. You're absolutely right to do so. So then, what is metaphysical modality? Well, basically, what it means for something to be metaphysically possible is to say that the actual world could be that way. Just to take a quick example, let's suppose that you had, five blueberries at breakfast, right? A very meager breakfast, I suppose. But let's say you had five blueberries at breakfast. Well, when we say that it's possible that you had six, metaphysically possible that you had six, what we're saying is that the world really could be such that you had had six blueberries instead of five. We're saying and so that's all that's really said with metaphysical possibility. I think that possible world semantics really muddies the waters with that, because when you say that there are these other possible worlds, it almost sounds like we're making like an existential claim about them. But really, it's just saying, when we say that there's a possible world in which you had, six blueberries, we're just saying it's possible you had six blueberries. You could have eaten another blueberry. And so that's really all that we're saying with metaphysical claims is it's possible that the actual world was such. It's not just like consistent with certain sets of laws, but the actual world really could be such that you had
Yeah, well,
had an
see,
extra blueberry.
you're saying when you say it really could be, do you take that to be some kind of primitive notion?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to explain it further. How to explain what do I mean by it could be that way.
Right.
Beyond,
So,
I don't know how to
s-
explain that further.
yeah, so do you think that I mean, because there have been philosophers, and I know recently, that have just been that have proposed just eliminating um that are just eliminativists about that kind of sort of irreducible modality, right? So they want to just say, well, yeah, sure, we have these like intuitions about what's possible or impossible. Um, but clearly these could be, you could just run a sort of evolutionary debunking argument and just say, well, look, um, if these modal truths were false, right? Like, why would we? Oh, sorry, if how should I put this? Our intuitions aren't really tracking actual modal truths. We don't really have. good reason to think that.
When you said the
Um,
evolutionary argument, are you saying something like, in order to survive, our ancestors needed to think, I could kill that wildebeest and eat it, and so they had to have these modal intuitions, and so that's all that there is to the modal. Is that kind of the argument you're making, or maybe I was reading too much
yeah,
into?
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so there's like sort of so that's an argument. There's like two responses they give to that. So first of all, it is the genetic fallacy to try to undermine a belief by pointing to how that belief was formed. But number two, it's sort of an argument that proves too much. So let's assume that's true. Well, in that case, there's an evolutionary argument for all of our beliefs because if evolution is supposed to explain why we believe and have these modal intuitions, well, it's going to also explain why we have rational intuitions. And so the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, these sorts of things, our mathematical beliefs, being able to know how many coconuts you have or whatever. And so, I don't know if they ate coconuts. It doesn't matter. The point is that if it's the case that the belief shouldn't be relied upon because evolution informed how we came to make those sorts of inferences, well, evolution would explain how we came to make all of our inferences. And so it's sort of an argument that I think proves too much because it would undermine all of our beliefs, not just modal intuitions, but everything.
Yeah, but I think with those other intuitions, I mean, presumably somebody else could have like all other reasons for believing in those things that aren't just intuitions. Um,
Well, so by intuitions, I mean so I'm including things like perceptual beliefs. I seem to be seeing a tiger over there, or I seem to be touching something wet. So perceptual beliefs would be a form of intuitions. Your memory beliefs. I seem to remember eating blueberries for breakfast. I didn't actually, but well, just for the sake of the argument, I seem to remember eating blueberries. That'd be a memory. Or testimonial beliefs. You seem to be saying things about evolution to me. So that seems to be the intent of the sounds that you're making in my direction. And so those are all intuitions. Those all fall under intuitions.
okay, I see. But do you think that somebody who didn't share an intuition that there are modal, these kind of irreducibly modal properties, do you think there is some argument to convince them otherwise?
Well, I mean, if you don't have the experience, then I can't appeal to that experience. So I mean, I did give two other reasons for affirming modal possibilities. Again, one would be string versus, as an example, string versus particle theory, where the fundamental particles of the world or whatever, you'd have to actually say that these competing explanations of reality are not just false, but they're actually metaphysically impossible. And so there's like something like 10 or 11 interpretations of quantum mechanics. You have to say that all but one of them is metaphysically. It's not just false. It doesn't just happen to be wrong, or it's wrong, but it could be false. You have to make the strong claim that all of those other interpretations are metaphysically impossible, which seems like a really strong claim to make. Maybe you want to make that claim, but it's definitely a strong claim to make. And then the other would be simplicity. That if you embrace modal collapse, then you're essentially saying that everything's necessary. And
Well, I
so,
just want to be. Well, I just want to be. I'm not embracing modal class. I'm saying that you might have the view that there are there are no irreducibly modal properties. So you're not saying that things are necessary or contingent, right? You're just sort of saying um neither of these are correct, right?
I don't think it could be the case that something is neither contingent nor non-contingent, which is what necessary is.
No,
So
no,
it does,
it would be non-contingent but not necessary either. So that's a
yeah. It seems like so necessary means is non-contingent, and so if we're saying it's neither contingent nor necessary, we're saying it's neither contingent nor non-contingent. And since contingent and non-contingent seem to exhaust all possibilities, I don't see how there would be a third option. And that'd be the law of logic called the law of excluded middle, that it seems like would be violating there.
Well, right. So to be clear, I guess this depends on what exactly you're understanding. I mean, it would require some sort of analysis of what you mean when you say physically possible or impossible. Because the thing is, I mean, I take it that what people mean when they say like metaphysically impossible, right? When they say that they're these irreducible normative, not normative, I'm sorry, modal properties, is they want to say, well, look, um, it's the case that things um really could have been different, right? We could imagine different scenarios for how the world played out, and you could say, yeah, like I could see that actually happening, um, in reality,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's, I mean, it's sort of difficult to really explain.
Yeah.
Um, and when something is necessary, they're saying, well, look, I can't imagine, or I can imagine maybe that not playing out that way. But it's just not something that could happen, right?
Well,
Somebody who wants to, yeah.
so it sounds like you're saying, well, your modal intuitions could be wrong. Is that kind of
No,
the?
no, no, no. Sorry. I'm saying something like, um, well, I'm just trying to sort of explain what I think people mean when they're talking about metaphysical modality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So somebody who denies that there is a metaphysical modality would just affirm, look, there's a way that the world is, right? There are like objects and properties that exist. Um, but there is no, if you're asking, could the world have been different, right? Well, logically speaking, yes. I mean, there's no contradiction with the world having been different, but there is no, like, how should I put this? Like alternate scenario, right? Like this idea that there are these like irreducibly modal properties would just be false, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess I can just point out that as far as I can tell, by my lights, that seems to be logically incoherent because it would deny the law of excluded middle, because contingent and non-contingent exhaust all of the possibilities. And so what we have is a situation where we're saying it's either A or not A. And so it can't be that it's neither A nor not A. It seems like at least that's the way the world seems to me. If it doesn't seem that way to you, then okay. I couldn't prove the law of excluded middle to you. I don't know how I would formulate an argument for it. I'd just sort of point it out and say it certainly seems to hold for me. But if it doesn't for you, then I mean I can't. Obviously can't. I don't know how to make an argument for it. But I guess that's really all I can say about that. But I'll let you have the last word, and then we'll go to Kevin.
yeah, well, so to give an analogy, I mean, that's like if somebody were to, do you know what error theory is? Have you heard of the concept of error
I
theory?
have. It's been a really long time.
Yeah, it's just like the idea that moral all moral statements are false. And so somebody, let's say somebody comes to you and says, well, something is either like permissible or impermissible, right? So, um, if you think that the statement that something impermissible is false, then you're saying that it is permissible, right? And so, but that's a moral claim, and therefore it's, I mean, you would have to be committed to saying something that's, I mean, error theory would be like logically incoherent. But clearly, the error theorists can just reply by saying, well, something being permissible and impermissible actually isn't a true dichotomy, right? Because impermissibility isn't merely the exclusion of um permissibility, right? Or vice versa, right? Permissibility simply being something not impermissible. Um, you would have to add the sort of extra, there's an extra assumption that in the case of something being permissible, um, it's not something simply that's not obligatory and n- not permitted, right? But that permissibility is itself a kind of property that things can have. Um, and so if you're just gonna state that things are um permissible in the sense that they're not impermissible and they're not obligatory, then well, yes. But then the air theorist just can commit to saying, well, that's not really a modal property, right? There's nothing sort of extra ontologically being added to the world, right? Um, if you're positing that something is permissible, right? And if you think it is an extra property, well, then it's no longer like a true dichotomy to say something is not permissible or impermissible.
Thank you for listening. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe. Please also look at the show notes in order to find a link to our group so that you can join our next discussion. I look forward to chatting with you.